Hi, we are going to study the present tense in this video, and the last video was the present continuous, in which we studied the verb to be plus the main verb of the sentence followed by ing. Okay, so now we are going to focus on the present tense, right? Let's get started. Okay, so this was the last lesson. Let's start with another one. The present continuous is very simple, right? Let's see. I study. You study. He studies. She studies. It it studies. It's strange because it's very unlikely that an animal or a thing is going to study, but okay, it's just for educational purposes. Okay, we study. You study. They study. So you see that when we have he, she, or it, we put s in the verb. For example, if we have the verb do, we add es, does. If we have the verb work, we could put the s, works. He works, she works, it works. He does, she does, it does, right? So it's more simple, it's less complicated than, let's say, Portuguese. Portuguese has many verb tenses and it becomes very complicated, many verb tenses, and we have to memorize the verb tenses. It's complicated, but in English we can say that it's simpler, at least in my opinion. The present continuous is used in many situations. Is used for things that happens in general, okay? On a regular basis, in a regular basis. For example, I get up at 7 every day. 7 a.m. So it means that every day I get up at 7. It's something that happens repeatedly. Okay, every single day I wake up and I wake up very early and I do something. Another example, I usually go shopping on weekends. Usually is an adverb that is used in the present tense very often, okay? I usually go shopping on weekends. Other example, the cafeteria opens at noon. So the cafeteria is closed, but it opens at noon. I have just woken up, and I ask, at what time does the cafeteria open? The cafeteria opens at noon. Why do I use s? Do I put s in the verb? Because the cafeteria is equals it. And we have already seen that when we have he, she, or it, we add s in the verb, okay? So it's very simple, isn't it? Okay, so let's see another situation, right? in which we have to use this verb tense. Let's see. How do we make questions in the verb in the present tense? We use the auxiliary verbs do or does. Oops, I misspelled. My writing is terrible, right? You have already noticed that. We have does and do. I make questions using does he, does she, does it work? Do I, do we, do you, or do they travel? So the auxiliary verb does is used when we have the pronouns he, she, or it. And when we put the as in the auxiliary verb, the main verb of the sentence comes without the s. And when we have I, we, you, and they, we use do, okay? So we begin the sentence with the auxiliary verb, then comes the pronoun, and then comes the main verb of the sentence. It's very easy. Let's ask some questions. Let's have some Q&A, right? Some questions and answers. I come, let me see. I come from Brazil. Okay, I am Brazilian. I come from Brazil. So how do you ask a question? Someone who wants to know where I come from. So where, because I want to know the place you come from. Where do you come from? Do is the auxiliary verb in the present tense. You is the pronoun. Come from. Come is the main verb, and from is the preposition which follows the verb come. So where do you come from? I come from Brazil. Let's see other examples. I don't go to parties often. I don't go to parties often, okay? So it means that I'm very shy, okay? I don't want to go to many places. I prefer to stay at home. So I don't go to parties often. So when you make a question, you say, do you go to parties often? Do you go to parties often? I don't go to parties often. Or you can also make a question like this. How often do you go to school? Often. How often? How often? I want to know the frequency that this action happens, okay? How often do you go to school? So you can answer, I go to school twice a week. Twice is two, right? Twice a week. I go to school twice a week. Okay, so I can use the present tense in affirmative or negative sentences. Water boils at 100 degrees Celsius. I want to express an idea that happens in general. So if I put water in a pan and put on the stove, put some fire on it, the water will boil at 100 degrees. So water boils at 100 degrees. Water doesn't boil at 10 degrees. So water won't boil at 10 degrees. It doesn't boil at 10 degrees. It boils at 100 degrees. Okay? So the negative, when you have a verb with s, which end with s, such as here, boils, the negative comes with does or doesn't. Okay, doesn't boil. You can make a question of it. Doesn't water boil at 10 degrees Celsius? No, water doesn't boil at 10 degrees Celsius. Okay, so let's see another example in which do can be the main verb. The other examples that we have seen so far, the verb do is the auxiliary verb, but the verb do can also be the main verb of the sentence. So let's see. What do you do for a living? What do you do for a living? This verb do is the auxiliary verb which follows you, okay? If you have she here, the auxiliary verb is going to be does. What does she do for a living? What do you do for a living? And this verb do is the main verb of the sentence, right? It means fazer, right? And this verb doesn't have a meaning. It's different, okay? So let's see. What do you do for a living? I am an English teacher. I am an English teacher. Okay, so you don't have to answer such a question with the verb do, because when you say what do, you can answer in various manners, in various ways to, there are many ways to answer such a question. You can say I am a teacher, I am an engineer, I work as an artist, okay? So there are many ways to answer such question. He does everything he can to help. He does everything he can to help. He likes to help. He is a very helpful person. So he does. Does here is the main verb, okay? All right. There are other situations as well in which we can use the present simple when we want to express how often we do things. Okay? We have already seen an example just before, okay, in which we saw how often do you go to school? I go to school twice a week. And now we are going to see more examples about how often something happens. Let me see. How often do you travel abroad? How often do you travel abroad? I want to know how often do you travel? On vacations, for example, or maybe you travel on business. I travel once a year. Okay? Let's see. And she gets back home at 9 p.m. So it's something that happens very often. So she gets back home at 9 p.m. Okay? Okay, I'm going to finish, I'm going to end this video right now, and later we will make another one. Okay, bye-bye. So, let's finish